Hey, how's it going? I've been reading about the issues that the PS5 is having with their launch consoles, not only with the SSD and the wiring sound and all that. And that reminded me of something that happened years ago with another company, with another console. In this case, the Xbox 360. And I know that I have mentioned it a few times in some videos, the Red Ring of Death. And I was here looking out my window, thinking about. Do you hear that car? Thinking about the PS5 issues, and I thought, you know what, it would be really cool to do a video on the Red Ring of Death and kind of explain what the situation was and how Microsoft handled it. That's what this video is going to be about. But I'm not going to do it here, standing next to my window in an overcast day. We gotta go to the chair for that. Here we are, in the chair. But hey, before we get started, let's throw that intro. So as I said at the beginning of this video, my inspiration to make this video is the issues that I've been seeing with the PS5. Now, everything that I'm about to talk about, I don't assume that the PS5 is going to have these issues and that the issues aren't going to be as big as what I'm going to talk about in this video. But it's a good reminder of things that can happen when something gets rushed. So some of the issues that I've been reading about and hearing about when it comes to the PS5 are the database rebuild issues, the issue when if you pull an external hard drive off the console without doing the proper ejection, that the system completely freaks out. That issue where you get this really loud whirring sound. Some people have described it as sounding like a refrigerator. And that the sound gets louder as you play games is another issue. And the other issue that I'm aware of is when you're downloading something and the download stops and then you cannot find what you were trying to download. And if you go to the store and it's something that you purchased in the store and you go to the store, it asks you to buy it again. So that's another issue. Other issues is that the system rattles, the plate rattles on the system and it hits the side of the console. So this is a good amount of problems for a new console. Now, I am not saying that the console is going to fail, it's going to die, and it's doom and gloom. I'm just saying that these are issues that are being widely reported. I am aware that it's not every single person who has the console, but you know what? As problems start creeping up, there is a chance that it could be a bigger issue.
You know, they say there are 2 new vaccines that are coming in just in time for the holidays. This is big news. They say they're almost impossible to get, and there's about a 90% chance of them working. Maybe I'm thinking of PlayStation 5.
The Red Ring of Death on the Xbox 360 was a huge problem at the time for Microsoft and its customer base. Let's go back to, what was it, 2006, 2007, when this issue started. Remember, at the time, there's no Facebook, there's no Twitter, there's no Instagram. The problems that people will have will either be known through comments in forums, people doing small videos on YouTube before YouTube was what it is today, talking about these issues. And originally, when the problem happened, Microsoft dismissed it and said that it was a normal system failure of 3 to 5% of consoles, which they said is within the normal range of a new system failing. Okay, but the problem just started getting out of hand and the problem started just mounting up. People were coming up with their own solutions since Microsoft wasn't saying anything about it. One of the solutions that people had was to wrap the console in towels and a blanket and to run the console as you had it wrapped to bring the heat up within the console. Magically, that fixed some people's problems. Other people weren't as lucky. Now, why did people think that this was a solution? Because the problem was that when the console got very, very hot, the motherboard will start warping and the solders in the console will start cracking and breaking. One of the reasons that they say the Microsoft gives for this is that they had switched to a lead-free solder compound, or I don't know what you call that. That made it that the console was having these issues when it heat up, the solder broke, your system ceased from working. So the solution of wrapping things up and letting it heat up was that the system will solder itself back on. Of course, this worked if your components hadn't completely gotten off the motherboard, because if they were still there and they just needed to warm up to solder themselves back on, then you were okay. But if your components were off the motherboard, no amount of wrapping was going to make this thing work again. Eventually, in 2007, Microsoft had to admit to the problem. Peter Moore, vice president of Microsoft's Interactive Entertainment Business Division, at the time published a letter in which he apologized for what was happening. And he also announced that the warranty on the system was going to go from 90 days to 3 years. And the best part about this is it wasn't just 3 years if you had bought the console at launch time or were one of these people that were having the issues. The 3 years were for everybody who bought a console at any point of the life cycle. This was a great solution because that meant that no matter what issues your console had, it was going to be covered. So at the time, that was the best solution and a great solution for the problem. Peter Moore actually talked about this in an IGN podcast. Here's the video.
We were seeing failure rates and starting to get reports through customer service.
Yeah.
But this was a thing that we actually couldn't figure out what was going on. We've got to tell Steve, we're going to need to, here's what we had to do. We need to FedEx an empty box to a customer that had a problem. They would call us up with a FedEx return label to send your box. And then we would FedEx it back to them and fix it. And I calculated with my finance team, $1.15 billion. Right out there. Well, I always remember $240 million of that was FedEx. And I am trembling, sat in front of Steve, who I love to death, but he can be an intimidating human being. And Steve said, okay, talk me through this. I said, if we don't do this, this brand is dead.
The other issue was that you really didn't know when that red ring of death could happen. It could happen at any time that you turn on your console. It was like playing Russian roulette. Literally, every time you went and touched a power button and the console started, you were like, this is great. But your relief didn't last long because a red ring of death could happen even while you were playing a game. All of a sudden, you will just get an error, look at your system, and you will get these 3 red lights. Every time you press a button and you got the green light was amazing. Other times, you could see this. And when you saw this, this wasn't fun because you knew you were in for it. Now, every red light didn't mean that your console was dead. I made the mistake a couple times of not plugging in the plug that had the component cables in it correctly, and you will get a red light for that. First time that happened to me, I was like, no, and then I realized what the issue was. Also, so solution 1, if you got the red lights, was to make sure that everything was plugged in correctly in the back of the system. But eventually it did happen to me. One day I went, turned on my console, and the console just got all the red lights, and I was like, nah. The problem was actually fixed rather quickly. I called Xbox support, told them of my issue. They sent me a FedEx box the next day, just like Peter Moore explains. Once I got my box, I put the Xbox in it. I kept my cables, my controller, and my hard drive. All I had to send was the Xbox. Once they received the console the next day, I got my console the day after. The whole process took about 3 days. And yeah, being without a console for 3 days, if you game a lot, which I was doing at the time, was just crazy. Like my favorite thing was to do was to come back from work, sit in front of my TV, and just play games for the rest of the night until I went to bed. And that was my routine. That 3 days I have a console were like, what am I supposed to do now? But The solution was quick and was easy. There wasn't questioning anything. They just sent it and you were good to go. Of course, as I said, the Red Ring of Death was the biggest issue that the Xbox had, was also the most publicized, but there were other issues that this system had that a lot of people don't talk about, but we will here. So scratch discs. Yes, you could have your discs scratched when you put them in the Xbox, and scratched to the point that you could not play that game again. You will literally take that game out and you will have grooves on the disc. Rumor is that Microsoft was aware of the issue. The rumor is that Microsoft knew that this was a problem, but they still shipped the console like that. What was discovered is that the disk drive was lacking the mechanism that will keep the disk in place as it span, right? In the disk tray. So what will happen is that disk will spin in the disk tray and then eventually will come out of place and it will just hit the sides and get scratched up and stop working. And then you had to open it. Sometimes the disk will come out with a tray. Other times you had to actually stick your finger in there and actually literally pull the disk out of the system. It was that bad. Now the rumors are that Microsoft knew about the issue and that they had floated some solutions. One of the solutions was to slow down how fast that disk will go in the disk tray. But if they did that, then that will make the loading times too long. So that solution got scrapped. The other solution was to add bumpers in the disk tray to keep the disk in place. Now the cost for these bumpers were 25 cents per console. The total came out to about $11 million. They also decided to scrap this solution because it would have delayed the launch of the Xbox 360 console. It kind of makes you think we're in 2020, in the middle of a pandemic, and we have two new next-gen consoles that just launched that don't seem to be ready for prime time, especially the PS5. At the beginning, Microsoft denied the issue and said that it was user error. Of course, this is what corporations do. That's why they have lawyers. Eventually, they kinda accepted blame, and the way they came up with a solution was through the disk replacement program. Now, if you were the unlucky person to have their game completely scratched up and unplayable, you could call Microsoft and buy the game again for $20 or $25, depending on the game. Now, it wasn't every single game that was available for you to do that. It was a small list of games that you could purchase again. So that meant that if you had paid $60 for that game that scratched up, adding the extra $20 or $25, that game was $80 to $85. And I am talking about 13 years ago. If you think $70 is expensive today for the next gen games that are coming in the next few months, then imagine paying $80 or $85 for something that you had no fault in. Then we have the 2006 update. There were many people who downloaded the 2006 patch to their systems. System rebooted, as every system does when it receives an update. And then when the system came back on, you got an error E71 on your screen, which meant that your console was bricked. That's right. Microsoft issued a patch that literally killed their consoles. Microsoft didn't admit fault again because of lawyers. And there was a lawsuit put in place because of this. Eventually, the lawsuit was settled when Microsoft extended their warranty to 3 years, because the warranty didn't only take care of the Red Ring of Death, but at the time, Microsoft decided that, hey, if we extend the warranty to 3 years, we can take care of all these issues that the console has when people send the console back to us. One solution takes care of all their problems. Now, why am I talking about the PS5 in this video as well? The reason is because At the moment, with everything that I have described about the PS5, the videos that I have done, which I'm sure you've seen peppered here and in the description section, kind of tells you and shows you that the PS5 was pushed out the door rather quickly. Not only the issues that I've described, but the fact that they are going to add VRR eventually to the console. They announced that they're going to maybe add 1440p support, that they are going to add support for expandable storage. All these things that they are going to add later makes it seem like the PS5 wasn't ready for prime time. So my hope is that the issues that we're seeing with the PS5 aren't going to become huge issues like the issues that the Xbox 360 had, that clearly Microsoft has learned from. Hopefully, Sony can look at another company that had a huge issue who actually handled it in a very good way. Did you experience any issues with your Xbox 360? If you didn't have an Xbox 360, did you experience the red ring of death problem? I would love to hear about it. Are you having any issues with your PS5? I would love to hear about that too. Go ahead and let me know in the comment section. That's it for me. Go ahead and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. It really helps the channel. Go ahead and hit that bell so you can be alerted every time we have new videos. And thank you very much for watching.